Hello, I'm Stephen Jerome, and I'm going to continue reading from my third novel, The London Year. This is part 77. Terry was just discussing a little about a sexual incident with Tess that was a little uncomfortable. But here we go at part 77. Yet through the half-truths and quiet disappointments, Tess and I had our own version of balance. We were making our own history, even talked fondly about the old days, living together at Wandsworth Bridge Road, when we'd sometimes walk to our local on a Saturday night. She'd have a shandy, I'd have my usual bitter, and we'd just soak in the pleasure of conversation. Then back to the flat for a good screw. Once Tess moved to her new flat in Notting Hill Gate, we did most of our socializing and all of our screwing in the comfort of her flat. But even then, we occasionally walked down to several local pubs. I indeed discovered the valued place that pubs have in English life. Before the 1980s, there was no such third place in LA. No cafe going as a way of life or streets for a promenade in the European sense or even the New York City sense. Nobody walks in LA. Missing Persons wasn't half wrong about that. The citizens of Los Angeles had no practice being among people, brushing shoulders, feeling the crowd of a city. The reason was partly geographic. For over 100 years, the ever-spreading suburbs had instilled a sense of isolation. Cars made the wide open spaces more accessible, but people were still in their bubbles, walled off by metal and shatterproof glass. Bus riding in LA had always been considered mostly for the working poor. This remained true even in the early 90s when the first threadbare subway system finally opened 50 years late. The Mañana syndrome is embedded in LA's DNA. Even then, it took most Angelenos a few years to catch on to the advantages of real mass transit. Los Angeles County has 88 cities, including the city of Los Angeles, so it's understandable that LA, as one thinks of it, is not actually a defined place. It has no true center, and there's no singular style. LA is as genuinely cool as its reputation, but that cool is hidden in the enclaves, in the woodsy canyons and behind the manicured hedges, mostly on the west side. Its greater footprint, however, is largely an unattractive sprawl. A car ride from the airport to anywhere has been known to make people weep with disappointment. Don't visit Los Angeles for a few days thinking you'll get it. You just won't. It's impossible. That said, for all its half-baked glamour, LA has remained a prime source for media writ large, movies, music, television, radio. But that's just LA doing what it does, projecting out from its insular core. That all changed forever when the 1984 Olympics came to town. It brought an international tide of people flooding in, and over the course of a single summer, LA's view of itself began to include the rest of the world. Most of the sporting and art events were programmed in downtown venues because the city fathers were determined to make DTLA a place after decades of neglect. As it happened, coincidence? I don't think so. A few months before the Olympics, I was forced to decamp from my Hollywood apartment after a fire in the building. Through a dear friend who was decamping himself back to Vancouver, I inherited 2 rooms, bathroom down the hall, at the American Hotel, a 1905-era boarding house which also housed at street level the now legendary Al's Bar, where bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Nirvana, and Sonic Youth played early gigs. Both bar and hotel were at the bullseye center of an emerging new art and music punk scene. Suddenly, I was in the eye of the storm. One of my 2 fourth-floor windows gave me a perfect view to the west of the city's burgeoning skyline. The other was above the patio behind Al's Bar. Burning Down the House was at constant play on the jukebox inside, and it wafted out to the patio and up to my window every night of the week. I never got tired of it. Most Angelenos didn't know downtown was even habitable. Our neighborhood didn't have a name. 30 years later, it would be officially designated as the Arts District, but by then no artists could afford to live there, least of all the starving ones. Rent at the American Hotel was so cheap, $270 a month for my 2 rooms, that my friend across the hall who rented just a single said in words I'll never forget, "If you can't afford $135 a month, you don't deserve to live." That's a quote. On my first night at the American Hotel, I was unaware that, with all the moving, my white cat Kitty, with her mismatched David Bowie eyes, had been inadvertently locked out, stranded in the hallway. The bar had closed. I was sleeping when there was a knock at my door. Answering it, Al's punk-haired barback held out his arm holding Kitty. "Is this yours?" he said. She must have jumped from an open window in the hallway, her long fall softened by the trellis of vines over the patio tables and chairs. Then she jumped or fell to the ground and ran inside the bar. The story got around, and in a matter of days, Kitty's stunt had introduced me to the entire neighborhood. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of community, surrounded by like-minded artists. That's where I began my real journey as a professional photographer, drawing a decade later on all the lessons and experiences afforded me by Sebastian. The full circle of it all still amazes me. But with the 1980s came LA's biggest change of all, which can be summed up in a single word: Starbucks. Finally, collectively, LA had a destination besides home and work. It is no exaggeration to say that Starbucks changed the city's entire social way of being. We didn't have pubs, but suddenly we had coffee. Then one Starbucks begat 1,000, and seemingly overnight, everyone was meeting for coffee. People became connoisseurs of fucking coffee. An entirely new vocabulary emerged. In pre-Starbucks days, people met at Denny's for coffee, pretty lousy coffee at that. All that changed in the 1980s. Okay, that's a very good place to stop. We'll continue tomorrow with the next part. Let's just say it's going to be part 78, and you can meet me in my garden right here. See you tomorrow. Bye.